The Out of Bounds podcast is brought to you by beautiful Clarksdale, Mississippi. Known as the crossroads of American music and culture, visit Clarksdale this weekend and go to visitclarksdale.com.
KS Pickens Jackson.
Are you ready? Yes!
Now live from the Whiskey 61 Lounge inside the Bank Plus studio.
Listening to
Mississippi's #1 sports talk show, The Out of Bounds Show with Bo Bounds. Streaming worldwide live on the Out of Bounds radio app and on your radio at ESPN 105.9. The Zone.
Man, oh man, it was chilly this morning, or downright cold, right? Yeah. Weird. Yesterday morning, I see a ton of deer on the way in. This morning, I don't see one. Why is that? We'll let somebody do a deer tracking pattern thing or whatever for us. Not live on the show, maybe podcasting. Out of Bounds, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. Brought to you by the New York Strip, side of scallops, bacon wrapped shrimp, Four Roses bourbon old fashioned. Wild man, did you have some Kessler Prime last night?
I did. Had a little dinner.
What'd you have? Sweet cheeks?
So, did the fried crab claws.
Oh,
obviously.
You cannot go wrong with the crab claws, man. I mean, they're delicious. They flash fry them.
They're so good.
And then that cocktail sauce is super yummy.
Yeah.
Okay, so you started off with some fried crab claws.
Obviously, the Parmesan peppercorn.
Which is very Mississippi, which is good. All right, so you did the peppercorn.
Parmesan peppercorn dressing. It's
I could dip anything in that.
Yeah, it's the go-to. Obviously, the rolls and the honey butter.
What is it that you don't like?
I don't know. There's so many
that makes
things.
you so weird.
Oh, I don't know. Avocado? Don't like that.
Yeah, you could even dip avocado. That's it. You could even dip avocado in peppercorn Parmesan.
Why would you want to waste?
And it would be unbelievable.
Why would you want to waste good dressing like that?
All right, go ahead.
Did the 10-ounce filet, medium rare, of course.
Okay.
Because anything more is a sin against nature.
Oh.
Brussels. Did the Brussels this time.
Brussels sprouts?
You know, that's something
I love
I've
Brussels
developed.
sprouts.
I don't think as a child
junior
most
high, 8-year-olds
school,
don't.
Well, I don't think you like anything bitter. I think that's like one of those things because there's a lot of foods that I've kind of noticed over the last 5 to 10 years that I've started to eat more that have kind of more of that acidic, bitter side to things that I think you start to develop that taste. They were fantastic. Man, I don't know if I've enjoyed the Brussels sprouts with the steak and then the French fries, of course.
Yeah.
You know, that acidity just cuts through the thick heaviness of the steak in a perfect way.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great alternating bite, of course. And then finish it off with National Pie Day. Had to have a lemon icebox, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, it is. It is.
The cold custard. Ooh.
Did you have a Four Roses bourbon old fashioned?
I did. I had two.
There you go.
Kev wasn't there, but a friend of mine, Mary, who I worked with back in the day, restaurant buddies from a decade ago. She's one of the bartenders up there. She's really good. If you ever go, ask for Mary. She's awesome. She
I know
whipped up,
K-Money.
Yeah, whipped up a couple cocktails for me, so that was nice.
That's what I refer to, or that's Kevin's nickname. Bartender.
Yeah, Kevin's
Kessler.
awesome. But
Yeah,
he was off. He had an off
He's
day.
been in studio mixing us up.
Well, I talked to Chris. They are actually working on us a Four Roses and Tito's Christmas cocktail menu that then they're going to come in and do for us.
Let's go.
A Four Roses a Christmas cocktail and a Tito's Christmas cocktail.
If Chris comes in, he has to bring some steak or tamales.
Ooh, well, you know, they have the A5 Wagyu. Right now it's a 10 out of 10 on the marble, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So maybe he can bring us in some Wagyu to go with our Christmas cocktails.
You know, when Scott and I went to Louisville, excuse me, Louisville's in the state championship, so I referenced them several times in the first and second segment of the first hour. But when we were in Louisville, Kentucky, for the picking out the Four Roses bourbon private selection, we had Wagyu up there.
Yeah,
with Scott,
it's quality,
and that's when I think he started to say, "Okay, this is what I want to do." But we don't have to have Wagyu. We can take just anything.
Maybe
that sounds like a pretty good. Yeah, I'd love
a little
that.
Sliced ribeye.
Well, you had a really good meal last night.
I had a quality meal.
Yeah,
quality meal.
Okay.
I think
That was more than quality.
Yeah, there's some. It was funny. We were talking about it and stuff, and my girlfriend said, "Have you ever thought about being a food critic?" And then we started talking about like Anthony Bourdain and all these different guys that do that kind of stuff or have done that stuff. Obviously, RIP. But that would be, I've never thought about that, but I think it'd be fun to travel around and just eat places and then tell people why it's good or not good.
Yeah. Now, a lot of those people are super prickly, so that would be right in your wheelhouse.
Right up my wheelhouse.
Yeah, because you like to kind of
critique.
Yeah, you really do.
Oh, it's a pastime.
Yeah, you like to borderline hammer people.
Well, and I, having worked in the restaurant industry, both as a lowly dish boy and as a bar manager, bartender, whatever you want to call it, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I enjoy the logistics aspect of a restaurant, and I appreciate when restaurants do it well.
Right.
And it's very obvious to me when they don't do it well.
Sure.
And I don't know, I've always said that, like, ever since I've worked in restaurants, I haven't been able to just sit at a restaurant and not, like, I notice it. I can't not notice it.
Yeah, once you work in the service industry, it's just something that's
for almost a decade.
It's
too.
why you're really, really nice and patient with waiters and bartenders.
Yeah,
and even if you get a 6 or a 7 out of 10 service just because of a crazy night, not that you did last night by any stretch,
no.
You still tip well. Those people that really haven't ever worked in the service industry, most of them don't get it.
But I also have zero patience for when there are not circumstances that dictate poor service, and
right.
you give me poor. See, like,
No
that's
doubt.
the difference. Is like, I guess like you said, I'm astute and observational enough to say, okay, is there a reason? Well, at least in this instance, is there a reason that the service or something isn't that way? But yeah, anyway, long story short, Kessler Prime, dinner's amazing. Steak was cooked, primo. Shout out Scott. Good job.
We just did 6 minutes on that, so that was pretty good. Let's segue into something else. First of all, I want to let our listeners know that we have NFL football today, Blake. 2:40. Ravens Steelers. Where's that game?
Oh gosh, that I think Pittsburgh, but I don't know that for a fact.
All right, so Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, it is, because the Ravens had to fly into Pittsburgh and they were worried about the snow.
Oh,
that is correct. So it is in Pittsburgh.
All right, Baltimore, Pittsburgh today. Isn't that crazy? Wednesday afternoon, NFL on NBC, and NBC couldn't carry it at night because they were committed contractually to the Rockefeller Christmas tree lighting in New York. So you'll get a 2:40 NFL game today. It will, oh man, the number will be huge. Even Wednesday, midweek, mid-afternoon, the number will be massive for NBC. Book it, guarantee it. It doesn't matter. If the NFL started at 5 a.m., they'd get a monster number.
Yes.
It's
why
just
people
incredible.
have said they should just add week 18, push everything back, because who's not going to watch?
Right.
Everyone will watch. It's not, they want to stay on schedule, and I get that, but there is something to be said about you're the NFL, like you kind of dictate your own ratings for the most part. So
yeah,
that's kind of interesting.
Let's go to the Farm Bureau Insurance call-in line. Blake, is this a chef?
No, I wish. Wayne wants to talk Will Hall to Southern.
All right, Wayne wants to discuss Will Hall to Southern Miss. Wayne, what's up, buddy?
Oh, man, just cold one. Well, you were talking about Will Hall earlier. Now, what kind of offense he run?
Well, I think Will has run a variation of spread offenses throughout his coaching career at West Alabama, West Georgia, and under Willie Fritz at Tulane.
Okay. Like I said, well, he'll run, he'll just kind of based on his talent, I imagine, or whatever, But anyway, I'm just curious. I wonder, I don't imagine that quarterback in Taylorville, I imagine he'll still go on to Tulane, I don't imagine he'll follow him, I don't imagine.
Oh, I think he will follow Will Hall. Thanks for the call. No. I expect Keys, who will play in a state championship game this week. I think that if this all lines up, if Will Hall is the next head football coach at Southern Miss, which we mentioned him as a candidate right when they Jay Hobson and Southern Miss went different ways. I expect Keys from Taylorsville to go to Southern Miss, but we'll see. I can't wait. And maybe we'll get an official announcement sooner than later. on the Southern Miss deal. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. The Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by Briarwood Wine and Spirits for all your Tito's and Four Roses Bourbon. Briarwood Wine and Spirits, 4949 Old Canton Road. Yeah, no, look, the rack of lamb at Kessler Prime is phenomenal. I've had lamb all over the country. And I mean, Vegas, Laguna Beach, D.C., Miami, New Orleans, Charleston. It's fantastic. KesslerPrime.com to make a reservation. The Out of Bounds Show is brought to you by Ace Bolt & Screw, powered by DeWalt Tools. Also presented by 49 Tire. 49 Tire, Richland, Mississippi, 49tire.com. They've got the valet service that works for you. In other words, they'll come pick up your vehicle, take it to 49 Tire, service it, brakes, maintenance, tires, under the hood, getting ready for road trips and so on, and drop it back by your home or office. That's as good as it gets. The show is powered by 49 Tire in Richland, Mississippi, driven by the Continental Tires at 49 Tire. So we're recapping the whole deal. We'll have Jake Wimberly will join us. He's going to set the edge on the show. Jake Wimberly. Jake Wim. Afternoon drive. ESPN 105.9 The Zone. He'll join us at 8:35 to talk big picture Mississippi high school football championships. All right. We had MRA and JA. MRA goes back to back in the MAIS. They beat Prep last year. They beat JA this year.
First time ever.
Yes. And, that's a heck of a football team and program. And we'll see what Philip Short does, who played last year there. He's playing at Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College, throwing up big numbers. Blake and I've been monitoring his season. And but MRA beat JA this year. They won the state championship. JA had an excellent team, too. They played at Veterans Memorial Stadium. Blake actually went. So they played it. I didn't know that until he told me the next week.
Very funny.
But I was there, obviously. But Veterans Memorial Stadium, what an experience. Very, very cool to play there. You're 15, 16, 17 years old. Now, this weekend, we get 3 state championship games on Friday. You can watch them on TV. You can stream them. You can listen to them on ESPN 105.9 The Zone. We're number one sports media platform in the state. Jake did a good job securing that. It's great for MHSAA. It's good for ESPN 105.9 The Zone. 3 state championships on Friday, 3 state championships on Saturday.
That's right.
And Oxford's trying to repeat. Chris Cutcliffe, David Cutcliffe's son, who's an excellent coach. Of course, that place has boomed. They've emerged as a 6A power. We'll take on Oak Grove, who's lived in the championship game too, and they've been winning for a long, long time.
With his last name, could Chris Cutcliffe coach his way into college football?
That's a good question as to what he wants to do. Obviously, Oxford is a really, really good school, both academically and athletically. It's a great community to live in. He spent
a decent portion of his childhood.
Cutcliffe took that job in December of 98. His first season was 99.
Yeah.
And, so that's a good question, Blake. I don't know if he's not a lifer, but if he's going to stay in Oxford, Oxford for 15, 20 years.
Ricky Black-esque,
right.
Or something different.
You see that sometimes, or if, like you said, does he want to bounce around?
His name you would think he could get the door open a lot easier than any of these other high school guys.
No doubt.
And high school guys make the jump all the time.
Yeah,
it's
now
so much more common than it used to be. Yeah. So
strong rumors that Brad Peterson is going to take a head coaching job somewhere. Excellent coach. And look, somebody texted us earlier, Blake, and asked us about the Brandon and Germantown jobs. Do we think they're going to come open? I do. I like both guys. Sometimes it's just time.
Yeah.
To, go your Michigan and Harbaugh. Sometimes it's just time to go your separate ways. I do expect Germantown and Brandon to open up. You know, those are good. Those are not just good. Have a chance to be great programs, but again, when you have the bodies and you got the rooftops and you have money, you need to win.
That's why I don't understand why Madison Central isn't winning state championships. It's never made sense to me since I was in high school.
Well, we're about 4 football fields from Madison Central right now.
At most.
And so I have to be very careful with this. I know a lot. I have so many friends. First of all, it's a good school. I have so many friends who have sent their kids there. Well, heck, I have friends who went there. But it was MR when I was at MRA. But now, anyway, it's Madison Central. Point is, they've underachieved. They've underachieved. They start in 94 or somewhere right around there. So that's 26 years, and you should be. I mean, they haven't won like they should, Blake.
They haven't won at all.
No.
I mean,
they got one state championship.
Yeah, I have friends that went there, but I don't have necessarily the ties that you do. And it's mind blowing to me that they don't put and they don't put guys into State and Ole Miss the way you would think. You had that. They're a monster 6A public school in the middle of the heart of your state. How do they not put out more D1 talent? What makes them different than all these other schools that put out D1 talent?
I think that you have to be a development program at the high school level. And
but half our programs are.
I know. I understand.
Most of our kids out of Mississippi
when I'm
come
around the MRA staff, all they talk about is development. And so they, even though they're winning big, right? They're 39-3, or something like that. That's really good.
But we talk about it in college. How many kids we get out of as freshmen and they're not ready? They're just not ready. Dollar Bill Johnson,
high school programs have to. When you heard Trent Dilfer yesterday talking about the Seattle Seahawks, the difference between the Seahawks and the Green Bay Packers, I don't care what level, I don't care what business. You have to develop. You have to develop your people, and the difference between the Seahawks and the Packers this year is the Seahawks not only made some moves, but they developed their guys. That second-year player from TCU has emerged as one heck of a defensive player. Even at that level, you have to develop your people. And what did the Packers do? They just sat on their hands, and they're not developing they're not doing what they need to do. Bears sat on their hands. Well, even at that level, the best of the best, the greatest athletes that we watch on Sunday Night Football, and noon when we have a great time with our nachos and our, Parish Canebrake beer, those guys have to be developed. John Snyder, general manager for the Seattle Seahawks, and Pete Carroll made 3 moves, and it's paid off because they've developed those players too. And even though you want to say like Jamal Adams is great, Bo, he's great, Blake, but look what they're doing with him.
Yeah.
He's a safety who they are allowing him to blitz and disrupt the pocket because they don't have enough edge rushers on their roster, which means what? They adapted. And they're developing the other players like the TCU guy that I referenced and the other guy that I can't remember his name, and Jamal Adams, even though he's the most name-worthy of the group. So take it down to the high school level. Even if you have 80 players out every year or more, 90, if you're not developing your kids, then you may as well go to the house.
Yeah.
Because I'm talking heavy doses of development.
It's just statistically impossible to have that many kids and be in this part of the state and not put out D1 talent. It makes no sense. It's not only improbable, it should literally be impossible.
I don't want to beat up on them too bad, but there needs to be some things happen that whatever. But I could give you the names of a bunch of kids that are developed at other programs. So, out of bounds, ESPN, like Jude Aldridge. I mean, Jude led the MAIS in sacks and so on for MRA. Didn't play as a 10th or 11th grader, but it's development. Now he's on the All-Star team, and he'll play Friday at Jackson Prep. They're practicing at MRA this weekend. The MAIS All-Star game is at Jackson Prep at 5 o'clock on Friday. So it's a big weekend of Mississippi high school sports with the All-Star game and MAIS, and then all the state championship games. Jake Wimberly will walk us through the big storylines this weekend. Coming up next.
Is this thing working? Give me some sound over here. Yeah.
The Out of Bounds Show is powered by the award-winning golf courses at Dancing Rabbit Golf Club in Philadelphia, Mississippi.
Yeah, so I did throw that out. You do have the MAIS All-Star game Friday afternoon at Prep. They're practicing at MRA and I don't know where else this week, and that's something to keep on your schedule. We'll have Jake Wimberly coming up here at 8:35. Jake Wimberly, part of the ESPN 105.9 The Zone team, and you can hear him from, this is different, I was going to say 4 to 6, but 3 to 6. As Matt Wyatt grabbed an hour, Matt's now noon to 3, and Jake Wim is 3 to 6 on 105.9 The Zone. We will carry on ESPN 105.9 The Zone all of the state championship games. So 3 on Friday and 3 on Saturday, which I think is really cool. Let me go through it real quick for you, okay? These are some of these teams just live in the championship games. It's insane. All right, Oak Grove against Oxford, West Point against West Jones, Louisville against Poplarville. I love some of these names. Taylorsville against Calhoun City, Noxubee County going against McGee, and these are two of my favorite names. Biggersville going against Lumberton. That just sounds like Mississippi high school football and loading up the bus with some thumpers. That's what it's. I mean, Lumberton, all they do is win. I mean, there are pockets in the state of Mississippi who produce tough kids who live it and breathe it, and, you know, they're committed. They got good, hard-working parents. And Blake, they produce really, really good football teams year in, year out. And I've said this real quick. I know you've got some thoughts. It's a big deal when you get on that bus in rural Mississippi and you get to drive to Jackson and play in Veterans Memorial Stadium. It was a big deal for MREJA kids, okay? Yeah. Please understand that. Prep, whenever that year is, okay. But it's a big deal for this group, this list you gave me, to jump on the bus and go play at Veterans Memorial.
Most of which those kids have probably never been to State or Ole Miss and seen the stadiums. So going to Veterans is like that's their introduction to a big stadium.
Sure.
You know, that's their first time. So I think what's interesting to me about what you talk about is we like to use, you know, colloquial terms and things like that and like little phrases, you know, thumper and pad level and, you know, head on a swivel and all that stuff. But Mississippi high school football, for the most part, a lot of these teams are not necessarily innovative, but what they are is they're lunch pail teams. They're teams that every day those
and
kids,
that's what works in this sport.
Well, and in this state specifically.
Right.
You know, look at the kids that you see recruited out of Texas and California a lot of times and what they turn into at the collegiate level versus what these Mississippi diamond in the rough. We don't, you know, Jeffrey Simmons might be one of the more polished, maybe A.J. Brown, the more polished guys we've put out in recent memory.
Will Rogers.
And even then, they need work.
Right.
I mean, they're not the elite super. You know, we have not put out the Trevor Lawrence, Vince Young walk on the scene and be already ready to win 10, 11, 12 games. It just doesn't happen as much.
Right.
And even at other positions. So these schools that you're talking about, Taylorsville, Lumberton, Noxubee, McGee, these are lunch pail schools where every day the whole roster, 1 through 35 or 45 or 55, whatever, gets up and says, I'm coming to work because the guy across from me is going to work hard, but he's not going to work harder than me.
Right.
And that's why the same 15 schools rotate their chances to win state titles.
right.
And none of the metro area, despite being full of Dandy Dozen kids, ever sees the light of day in the state championships. Because they're not lunch pail programs. They don't put in the work.
You do have to be a lunch pail program regardless of where you are. That's a good point. We're going to have Jake Wimberly on here in the next couple of minutes, and we'll segue real quick. We've got recruiting coming up. I'm still blown away that Will Rogers was the 19th ranked prospect in the state of Mississippi last year. Think that kid can play? First of all, he's playing the most difficult position. You think it's been a difficult year for everybody. Then at MSU, 47, 50 scholarship players. You know what he has around him. Other guys are trying to grow up, and has played some really good football, and looks like he's got a bright future ahead of him at MSU. He was not the number. Well, we won't even say one. He wasn't the number 3, 6, or 9th rated prospect last year. He was 19th. Jaden Wally was 17th. And I've said this, Philip Short should have also been in the top 15, maybe even 10 prospects last year. Again, value of position, quarterbacks. And Will Rogers was not. He wasn't in the top 5. He wasn't in the top 10. And he wasn't in the top 15 of last year's class. Want to welcome in Jake Wimberly, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Jake joins us on the Parish Cane Break guest line. Jake Wim, what's up, buddy?
Bo, Blake, what's going on, guys? How are you?
I'm doing well. First, let's start with very important stuff. How's the hair today? Is it mousse, gel, or combo?
It is a little hairspray and a little gel, but it's I'm going to get it cut today.
Oh, okay.
It's right at the point where it's almost you can't fix it. So I've kind of got the sunglasses on it. Just kind of trying to keep it out of the way today until I can get it cut.
Okay. Will you send me a selfie?
I absolutely will.
When you're in the barber chair or whatever?
You have my word. I'm sending you a selfie today.
Okay.
In the barber chair.
All right. I would tell you to send it to me through Snapchat, but I'm not on Snapchat, so
I'm going to just text it to you.
Just text it to me.
This segment is so off the
All right. Jake, you got to call every single one of Will Rogers' games at Brandon. You had an opportunity to see him grow up, get better, the good and the bad. Everybody goes through, but he had a great career at Brandon. Walk me through what you were able to see at Brandon, and then what you've seen the last few weeks with everything that's going against them, what he has around him, 50 scholarship players, and the way he's played in the SEC. And he hasn't been able to pad his stats against UT Chattanooga or New Mexico State, Jake.
No, I'm old enough to remember calling Gardner Minshew's games and looking over, to my right where typically the coach's booth would be, and Will was an 8th grader at that time, and sitting in the booth with his dad and had the headset on, and he was on the field throwing with the guys before the game. I mean, the guy was a player before he was really a player, if that makes sense. And you always kind of knew, and people said, hey, he's going to be a good one. And then when you saw him throw it, you could definitely tell he was going to be a good one. And look, he had a heck of a high school career. And the thing that kind of pops off the page for me is that he could make every throw. And I know, we use that term a lot, but I mean, when I say every throw, I'm talking about the soft throw, the hard throw, the touch pass. He could go through progressions. And, talking with some of those coaches over there last year, I asked them, I said, a couple of them, I said, how much his last year, I said, how much leadway do you guys give Will? And they said, are you serious? They said, when you see him out there doing all the stuff with his hands and he's walking back and forth, I mean, he's running the show. I mean, he can run the offense by himself. So extremely savvy. He's been doing this a long time, grew up around it, just kind of a football junkie. And when you watch him at Mississippi State, and especially the last couple of weeks, you see a lot of those same things. Extremely passionate player, a guy that leads by example and loves the game. And the same Will that you're seeing today is the same Will that you saw at Brandon for 3 years.
You mentioned his dad, Wyatt Rogers, has been the offensive coordinator, QB coach at Brandon for some time. He was also coached hard, right, by his dad?
That is correct.
I mean, wouldn't you say that there was a lot of accountability and discipline, and Wyatt stayed on him? In other words, he didn't get a pass. How about that, Jake?
Oh, absolutely. And look, Wyatt is a friend too, so I don't think he would mind me telling this story. Played over at Northwest Rankin a couple years ago, and I don't think that he was necessarily, coaches and players, coaches with sons that are players or daughters that are players, typically can get really hot. And I think it was the first year that Will was a starter. We were over at Northwest Rankin, and Will threw an interception, and Wyatt comes out of the booth, headed down the stairs, and turns around and comes right back up like he almost caught himself, like, I'm not going down here to do this. So, but yeah, extremely, extremely tough on Will, but fair, absolutely fair. Wyatt's an amazing coach, amazing father, and extremely fair, to Will. You never really saw him, baby Will, probably harder on him than anybody.
And let's talk about the last couple of weeks. Jake Wimberly on the Out of Bounds show. You can hear Jake, obviously, 3 to 6 every day on 105.9 The Zone. His pocket presence, and I think he moves better than people thought he could. The pocket broke down on him several times against Georgia and Ole Miss, yet he extended the play and made the play, Jake. Your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. He's got great pocket presence. I don't think that's talked about enough, especially with quarterbacks who sit in the pocket. And, a lot of the stuff that you see out there with Dak Prescott warming up and the memes, moving his hips and doing all that stuff, these guys are taught by, a ton of guys, not just their high school coaches, but just people like, these quarterback gurus that you see out there that have these camps and stuff to move and how to move in the pocket and how to trust your offensive line. And Will does that better, as good or if not better than anybody in the Southeastern Conference. Buying time, just an extra second, an extra half a second, he does that well.
I'm telling you, man, that young man's played some good football this year. Very impressed. Hopefully they'll get at least 2 more games. Because you know how it is, Jake. I mean, every rep for him this is a weird year, almost just a redshirt year, if you will. Can you imagine if he puts on 10 pounds of muscle, what he could look like by next Labor Day?
Oh yeah, and would probably expect that to happen. These guys always make that freshman to sophomore jump, and will probably look a much different player than what you see today.
Let's switch gears. I can't believe he wasn't a top 5, top 10 prospect, by the way, Jake.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. And, you hear a lot of stuff. I can remember after his junior year, there was some criticism there. And when I say criticism, not necessarily in the community, but you just kind of saw it on the internet. You saw it on, football circles of just people who watch football and said, well, he lost Jonathan Mingo. He's not going to, we're going to see the real Will Rogers. And I'm thinking, looking at the roster, I'm thinking, okay, this kid can play, and this kid can play, and I know Will can play. And he had probably a better senior year than he did a junior year. So, sometimes these narratives get started, just like with Minshew that he couldn't play, Division I college football. That narrative started and stuck for whatever reason. And sometimes these narratives start and they stick, and, there's really no place for them anyway.
Is Minshew like a big brother to Will Rogers?
Yeah, I would say that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's switch gears. Jake Wimberly on the Parish Canebrake guest line. Mississippi high school football state championships this weekend, and we're going to carry them on ESPN 105.9 The Zone because of you. Jake, you and I were talking about this yesterday. How remarkable is it some of these programs almost live in these championship games, Jake?
Yeah, you've got a great mixture of teams in this batch. You obviously 12 teams, six classifications, north and south, and you've got a great mix of teams that's been there. I mean, West Point is this is their 14th state championship appearance. Louisville, this is their 10th. Taylorsville, their 13th. Calhoun City, their 12th. And then you go the other way, and you've got a team like Biggersville, which to me is one of the best stories of the entire year. This is a team that had 28. They've had 28 losing seasons. Now, all of this data is pulled in reference to all the way back to 1981. That's when the MHSA basically went to a full-scale state playoff format. Regions were formed. You got away from the Little Six and all of the little conferences that you had. But Biggersville's had 28 losing seasons since 1981. This is their first ever state championship appearance. So you go from one end of the spectrum with a team like West Point to the other end of the spectrum with a team like Biggersville. And then you throw in teams like McGee, who hasn't been there since 2000, and then Poplarville, who's trying to win their first state championship. It is a ton of storylines that will be told and that people should enjoy Friday and Saturday. Yeah,
when I was growing up, McGee was a monster, and they kind of lost their way, which is what you just described, and now they're back. I want to touch on West Point. Didn't you tell me yesterday from like 94 to 2001 they weren't any good? And then the last 20 years they've been – I mean, I know Chambliss is really good, and they've been on a roll for some time. But they were not a good football program from about 94 to 01. Is that right?
Yeah, they have 8 losing seasons since 81, excuse me. And those years were literally back to back to back, 94 through 2001. And what's interesting about that is, a lot of these schools that go on runs, they have these high school factories that they depend on. I mean, Ole Miss and South Panola, Mississippi State, for whatever reason, hasn't ever really materialized out of West Point. But that was during Jackie Sherrill's heyday in Starkville. West Point was nowhere near the West Point that we know today, the same West Point that has, won, 11 state titles. They're going for number 12. Nowhere near it. 1994, 2001, losing season every year.
Can you imagine if Sherrill would have had a powerhouse West Point program to pull from? Because he would have tapped into that and made the most of it.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. And just he did not have that. And I'm trying to go back and remember, Noxubee County just down the road from there. Noxubee has won 5 state titles, but they just never had, the type of team, say, a West Point had, especially in numbers. I mean, they've had obviously guys like Jeffrey Simmons and others that went on to play major college football, but nothing like what West Point we see today.
Mm-hmm. Oak Grove and Oxford. Tell me how many. So I know this is a rematch, but how many years in a row has Oak Grove been in the championship game?
This is their third straight year, and this is their 7th overall appearance. They've only got 1 state title. They won it in 2013. That was the year. Heard you guys talking this morning. Brett Favre and Neville Barr. They beat Tupelo in 2013.
Okay,
but this is their 3rd straight year. They went 3 years ago, played Horn Lake. And what's interesting about that is they got a chance to play both of those games down at the Rock in Hattiesburg, so right in their backyard. Just couldn't really, ever get over the hump in either game. Really, really close games. Last year, I had an opportunity to be on the sideline and work that game against Oxford, and it was an amazing football game. 2 really well-coached teams, great talent, and Oak Grove had a shot there. I mean, they were leading in the 3rd quarter, and then Oxford really pulled away. And I'll say this about Oxford, too, and I think people at Clinton will probably attest to this. I mean, that is a gritty team. That is a well-coached team. Talked to Ray Coleman last week, who calls Clinton. He's the play-by-play voice, obviously, for Clinton. And he said the thing that stuck out to him about Oxford is they seem to know every time when Clinton was going to run a big play on 3rd down, what they were running. Just extremely well-coached. And that 6A game on Friday night is going to be remarkable.
I enjoyed that Clinton-Oxford game, Jake, last Friday night. I watched that at my house. There was a lot of back and forth there, but you're right. Oxford made the plays in the second half. So Oxford's going for back-to-back, and Oak Grove has lived in this game the last few years. I mean, and Neville Barr retired a few years ago. Who's the coach at Oak Grove?
At Oak Grove, and you just put me on the spot there.
Well, you said it anyway. That's okay. We'll get back to that here in a minute. So where did I want to go from here?
Drew Causey. Sorry,
yes. Drew Causey. Calhoun City, you gave me a stat of how many championship games they've been in.
Calhoun City has lived in this game. They have 12 state championship appearances, but only 2 championships. Now, you got to remember this, too. A lot of that was coming through. They played, it seemed like forever, they played Bassfield when Bassfield had all of those players down there, and they were just running title after title. Calhoun City would get to the championship every year, and they just could never get over the hump on Bassfield. But 12 state title, this is their 12th state title appearance. And the thing is, now they run into a buzzsaw again on Saturday. Not saying they can't win the game, but you're talking about a team in Taylorsville who, beat Jackson Prep this year, but lost to Jackson Prep last year. But this team can throw it, and they've got a ton of athletes. And again, it's going to be an uphill battle for Calhoun City, but 12 total championship appearances for Calhoun City.
Unbelievable. Lumberton lives in this thing, man.
Yeah, Lumberton has been there quite a few times. 7 appearances and 4 titles. So, I mean,
wow.
Odds on in, when they get there, they're going to pull the trigger and win it. And, here's another stat for you, too. When you look at Louisville, this is their 10th overall appearance. They're undefeated. They're 9-0 in state championship appearances. So if they win, they will have won their 10th championship, 0 losses at this game.
Do you know how hard that is? 9-0 in championship games. God.
I mean, that's amazing. I mean, considering if a team like West Point, who's got 11 total, state titles, but they've got 3 losses in this game. So, yeah, you're talking about overall winning percentages, like teams that you can just say they get here, they're going to punch a ticket. I mean, Louisville would be the team that you would have to circle.
Wow. Jake Wimberly on the Out of Bounds show. We'll carry all 6 championship games on ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Before I go to Blake, real quick, Jake, you called all of Brandon's games this year. Who was the best player so you got to see a bunch of different teams. Who was the best player that you watched play this year on Friday nights?
Probably the young man, and his name escapes me. He's committed to Mississippi State, played quarterback for George County. He's a guy that's committed to State. He's listed as an athlete, and again, I don't have that up, but he's
M.J. Daniels.
Yes, threw a touchdown pass, returned a punt for a touchdown, returned a kickoff that flipped the field, and had a pick 6 in the game. So I mean, the guy is an absolute, stud of a player on the high school level. And look, George County, they made the playoffs last year, so they didn't have a ton of talent this year. It wasn't the year that they wanted, but I would have to go M.J. Daniels as the best player I saw. Probably second best player that I saw would probably be the quarterback down at Oak Grove that you're going to see Friday night.
Okay. All right. Something to keep an eye on as we get Oak Grove and Oxford in the 6A state championship game. Blake, you have a question for Jake Wimberly.
Yeah, Jake, real quick. I know we don't have a ton of time, but you just spent a bunch of time talking about all these great schools and programs and these winning cultures and all that stuff. And I didn't hear you talk about a school that was within like 50 miles of me. So how is it that the Dandy is always Jackson metro areas, and yet none of these schools ever win state championships? I'll hang up and listen.
Well, I mean, again, the Dandy there's a lot of players from the metro that made the Dandy, and there's a lot of players that haven't. I've always said this. It is extremely tough, and I think everybody knows this, to win titles. And then when you look at, I think when you go pre-South Panola, obviously people always love high school football. High school football has been an amazing, Friday night gathering around the state of Mississippi for, going on, 40, 50 years now. But I think when South Panola went on the run that they went on, I think that made people kind of wake up. And, a lot of the good programs were your Meridians and your South Panolas and your Taylorsvilles and your Wayne counties. Prior to Katrina, you had, Moss Point, and, you can go to Tupelo and places like that. But South Panola really changed the way people played, kind of like Nick Saban when he stepped in the SEC. Everybody started playing a little different too, or Urban Meyer. So then you started to see teams like Brandon and Pearl, Madison Central, and Madison Central. They have been somewhat of a North stalwart forever. And here's a lot of times people don't say this or talk about this, but had it not been for South Panola's run, Madison Central very well could have had the same run. It's just every time Madison Central got to North State, South Panola was sitting there waiting on them. So, you got to give a lot of credit, I think, to what Lance Pogue and those coaches did up at South Panola. And I think they really kind of made other people change the way that they coach, if that makes sense. Now, that doesn't answer why, you don't have the success here in the Metro. But I think what you've seen now is we've got some really good teams, really good coaches, and some really good programs right here in the Metro.
Jake Wimberly on the Out of Bounds show. Jake, appreciate it, buddy. We'll talk soon.
I'm sending you the selfie today. See ya.
All right, see ya. Jake said he's having a pretty good hair day, but he's getting it cut. So I get a selfie at some point today. Jake Wim, 3 to 6, 105.9 The Zone. As Jake led the way, ESPN has 105.9 The Zone. We'll have all 6 state championship games. We've got David Johnson coming up at 9:30. Rebels 247 Insider, Ole Miss Insider, and he'll join us on the Parish Cane Break guest line. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. The Out of Bounds show is brought to you by Chris Corley, Angel Oak Home Loans. If you're refinancing your home, Chris Corley, Angel Oak Home Loans. The Out of Bounds podcast is brought to you by beautiful Clarksdale, Mississippi. Known as the crossroads of American music and culture, visit Clarksdale this weekend and go to visitclarksdale.com.